Welcome to Front and Center with Chuck Hobbs. I am your host, Chuck Hobbs. We are only a few weeks removed from the 2020 election, and as we anxiously look forward to the Biden and Harris administration that should begin, barring any unforeseen mishaps over the course of the next 50 some odd days, we also are starting to take a closer look at what it is that we, the people, can expect from the Biden-Harris administration beginning in 2021. So to discuss some of that and some of the things that are happening in my home state of Florida, I have brought on a very special guest today, former United States Representative Gwen Graham. Good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon, Chuck. So good to see you.
Always a pleasure to chat with you. Now, listen, one of the reason I'm smiling like this is, as a native Floridian, having grown up here in Tallahassee, everybody that grew up in the 70s or 80s loves your dad, former governor and United States Senator Bob Graham, who served when we were kids. Many of us who grew up loving politics or interested in politics, we looked up to your father greatly. And so it has always been a pleasure for me to be able to correspond and be friends with you as well. And from time to time, see the former governor and senator, because I recognize that your family has done so much with regards to pushing progressive politics here in the state of Florida for the duration of your lives. So with that, I actually want to get started, though, with talking a little bit about you. I know that you went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and then you later got your law degree from American University. And you have served as a lawyer, as a school board administrator, and then at some point you got the political itch as well. What factors led you to seek elected office?
Well, first, thanks for the kind comments on my dad. I am a very blessed daughter. There's never been a day I haven't been proud to have him as an example, not just as a father, but as what a true public servant should be. So thank you for that. Yeah, and I just, because I grew up in a political family, I never thought that I would run for office. It wasn't something that I had planned on doing, but it was actually in 2013 that I started thinking about my skill sets and what I like to do. And what I really enjoy doing is bringing people together who often have very different positions and are at odds with each other, frankly, at times, and figuring out how do you work together, talk to one another, overcome as much of the differences as you can to find a solution. I'm a very solution-oriented person, and it's something that I've done throughout my career and practicing law in different capacities. And then as the lawyer for the school district here in Tallahassee, it was something that I really saw as a strength that could be used in the political arena, because everyone knows how confrontational and adversarial our politics have become. And so I ran for that reason, because I felt I could make a difference. And in fact, saw that skill set in Congress was something that I put to use to the advantage of my constituents and the people I represented in North Florida and in our state and in our country.
Absolutely. And with that, that's a perfect segue into a question that I have, which is, when you served in the United States Congress, from the outside looking in, we recognize that gridlock has been there definitely since, I'd say, around 2010, when the Tea Party arose within the first year of the Obama-Biden administration. And it seemed as if every step there was just going to be no attempts at being able to reconcile anything across the aisle. That's an outsider's perspective. As an insider, was it the same, or were things actually a little bit less, angst-ridden for those serving in Congress with your friends across the aisle in the other party?
Well, I think it really depended on what your goals were as a member of Congress. And my goals were to get things done. And when I was in Congress, we were in the minority. And so building relationships and friendships, which is something I love to do, regardless of whether I disagree with the individual or not politically, you can still like someone and not agree with them. And so I really made it a point to get to know other members, whether they were Republicans or Democrats. And I found that it was those relationships and friendships that allowed me to get through the Congress, the legislation that I knew would be helpful to my district and Florida and our country. And in fact, I never had a single piece of legislation that did not have a Republican co-sponsor. That was very important to me. And a lot of what I wanted to accomplish, I was able to attach to pieces of legislation that were moving. And it was because I had friends in the majority that wanted to help me get certain things done. And I was very successful getting that done. Now, a lot of times it's not something people even know about because it's these massive pieces of legislation that are going to be signed into law that you can attach different policy expectations, things you would like to get done that then become law as part of, for instance, the National Defense Authorization Act, which is something I was on the Armed Services Committee, so I was able to get a lot done through that.
Absolutely. And with that in mind, I know that in 2017, toward the end of your first or your term in Congress, you actually made a big decision. You decided to run for the Democratic nomination for governor here in the state of Florida. With that in mind, we both know that Republican Ron Desantis ultimately was the winner. Florida seems to constantly be in the news these days. Many people have opined that Ron DeSantis is somewhat Donald Trump light. We know that to a great extent, he won the Republican nomination back in 2018, or some of us have opined so, based upon the fact that he had the support of the president. And, you know, Adam Putnam, a guy that I've known for a long time, even though I don't necessarily agree with his politics, Adam, we all know, I was shocked to see that Ron DeSantis seemingly came out of nowhere. I know he was a congressman to actually win when, you know, conventional wisdom might have held that Adam Putnam would have been the Republican nominee. Having said that, there are many people who are disappointed with the way Ron DeSantis has actually behaved as governor during this coronavirus pandemic year of 2020. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that. How do you judge his performance, both from handling the pandemic as well as the Florida economy this year?
Well, Chuck, this is a nice segue to what I just discussed in your last question, because in my goal as a member of the Florida delegation to develop relationships and friendships with all of the members of the Florida delegation, there was one. I love my proud dad mug in the background. That's my husband, by the way. So I'll move that out. But I just noticed that. Ron is a very challenging individual in terms of the ability to interact with him, to have a conversation with him, to discuss issues with him. He just doesn't have any interest in doing that. And I found that in serving with him in Congress, and he always, it was clear that he had no interest in being in Congress. It was just a stepping stone to whatever his ultimate ambition is, which is to be president of the United States and to run for president in 2024. So some people don't remember, but he actually ran for the United States Senate when Marco Rubio was running for president. And then when Marco got back into the Senate race, he dropped out. So my belief in public service is that you run for the office that you wish to serve in, that you feel you can do the most good in, not because you use it as a stepping stone to the next office. He had no real desire. He has no real desire or interest to do the job of being governor of Florida. And he has now been met with and let's not be naive, no matter who was governor during the coronavirus pandemic, it was going to be an extremely, extremely difficult time to try and navigate, to save as many lives as possible and to keep as many people as possible from contracting the coronavirus. Because one of the things that's not discussed frequently, and it should be, is the coronavirus is not you either survive or you die illness. It is, you can survive, but be left with a lifetime of debilitating sickness as a result of contracting the coronavirus. So, you know, the approach that, well, some people are going to be vulnerable and other people are not, is just not scientifically accurate. And for those of you who follow my Twitter feed, and I, you know, who doesn't?
Right.
You know, back in late February, I tweeted at Ron and I said, what are you doing to plan for the coronavirus? Little did I know the path that I was putting my Twitter feed on, because it became very clear that he was doing nothing to plan for the coronavirus other than do whatever Donald Trump told him to do. And so here we are. I think today we will go over 1 million cases in Florida. Today, I believe, I haven't seen any numbers today. They're really starting to delay and make it difficult to even get the numbers. It's really very sad, because Florida's government used to be based on transparency and having an open government. And, you know, in the last 20 years of Republican rule, we've seen that more and more undermined. So in terms of Desantis, there wasn't anyone that I felt, in all the candidates that ran for governor in 2018, that was least capable to serve as the governor of the third largest state in the country. At the beginning of his term, I was hopeful. And if you go back and look at my Twitter feed then, I expressed that I was hopeful that maybe Ron would surprise me and surprise a lot of people who felt he was not up to the job of being governor of Florida. I think he had, at the beginning, some very strong people advising him that are no longer there. But since then, he has tragically confirmed all of my worst nightmares about what being led by Governor Ron DeSantis would mean for the state of Florida. And that has resulted in a failed coronavirus approach that basically he is just saying herd immunity, you know, we're just going to let people catch it and not take any steps like wearing a mask or things that are very simple to do. I just don't understand how anyone who is wired as Ron DeSantis is wired want to put himself in a position that he was so unfortunately not fit for. He's really not someone that likes being in the public eye either. If you've ever noticed, he basically runs from being put in a position where he's going to have to answer a tough question. He's real happy on Fox News or Sean Hannity, but you put him in a position where he has to answer tough questions, and you can tell how uncomfortable he is. And it's not even, you know, people think I'm giving a long answer to your question, which is that sure. It is what elected office should mean today is putting aside the party labels. I don't care that Ron DeSantis is a Republican. People think that it's a partisan issue. For me, it is not. In fact, I've been criticized for being so not driven by politics. And when I was in Congress, I was ranked in the entire 435 members of Congress. I was the 9th most bipartisan member. And I don't know how 8 beat me, because it was for me important that what we do in government is not seen as partisan. And I think that unfortunately our politics have strayed from that. I hope that with the election of Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Harris, that we will be able to return to a time where you weren't demonizing each other along political lines, because that's not the best way to govern.
No, I definitely agree. And one of the things, Representative Graham, that stands out to me on your answer is the fact that, you know, partisanship has not always been the way of the world here in the United States of America. I can think back to even 20 years ago when we were waiting with bated breath around this time for the outcome of the 2000 election between George Bush and Al Gore. And as one who supported Al Gore, yes, I was disappointed that ultimately the United States Supreme Court halted the Miami-Dade recount and George W. Bush became the president, but he was still the president, right? And I think that many of us who are Democrats even felt even stronger about that about 9 months later. You know, we didn't know that the events of 9/11 were going to happen in 2001, but when those towers were crashed into and the Pentagon was crashed into and that plane ultimately fell down in Pennsylvania, we were all just Americans, and we were definitely united behind President Bush at that time, whether you voted for him and supported him or not. And now, just 20 short years later, I just don't see it. I even read earlier today that President Trump is considering having a 2024 campaign rally at the exact same time that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be sworn in on January 20th, 2021. And so it's just, when will it stop? And like you, I was somewhat impressed over the last couple of days to see that Brian Kemp, governor in Georgia, has started to push back. And Raffensperger, the Secretary of State up there, they are pushing back finally. I've wondered what took so long for many on that side of the aisle to actually grow a spine or firm up their spine and push back and what have you. But again, I guess better late than never, so to speak. With that in mind, also, I want to ask you this. When you're talking about the pandemic particularly, what types of things could government do here in Florida to help offset the spread? You know, for me, I wear a mask. If I have to go to Publix, if I have to go to CVS, I put the mask on. I keep the sanitizer in my truck. I want to make sure that I am as safe as possible. And it's just common sense. I don't need a government mandate to do it. But it does frustrate me sometimes when I'm out and I see people not wanting to put these masks on. And so what is it that government can do to help inspire Americans to understand, look, this is a temporary frustration, but it's for the benefit of all if we adhere to these simple rules?
Well, what's interesting is the lack of recognition on the part of Governor Desantis that, you know, government is often tasked with protecting people from themselves. I mean, for instance, we have seatbelt laws because not only do they protect the person in the car, but they also protect, you know, if you crash, it limits the collateral damage that can occur from that as well. So seatbelt laws are a perfect example because you can't trust that people are going to wear seatbelts. So what's the enforcement mechanism? If you're not wearing your seatbelt and you have an accident, you're going to have greater fines and there's going to be a greater financial impact on you. So people put on their seatbelts. So the same thing is the mask, wearing a mask. It's not just to protect yourself, but it's to protect others. So how do you, if people aren't willing to do it on their own, you have to have some way to encourage them to do it. And usually that is, if you don't do that, you're going to end up with a financial impact, a ticket or a fine of some sort. Well, what has DeSantis done? He has denied local governments the authority and the right to enforce a fine if somebody is not wearing a mask. It just makes absolutely no sense. And what's also ironic is that generally Republicans tend to believe that government should be closest to the people until they don't want it closest to the people. So he's mandating from the governor's office what should be a community decision based on the elected officials who are closest to that community as to what is right across our state of Florida. But again, DeSantis does not take the steps that indicate that he is truly a leader. I think he is a follower of Trump and, quite frankly, so out of his league to be responsible for developing a plan for the coronavirus. And again, as I said earlier, I'm not naive about this. I mean, we were going to lose a lot of lives and we were going to have a lot of illness. But that doesn't mean you abdicate your attempt to try to diminish the illness and the deaths. And that's what DeSantis has done. He's abdicated his responsibility to at least lead and to at least try.
Yes, and that brings me to another concern that I have had over the last few years, which is when you consider that Republicans since 2010 and maybe even 2009 have consistently been pushing hard about ending the Affordable Care Act, repeal and replace Obamacare. That has been their mantra over the last decade. And yet when you push them and ask them, okay, when you say replace, what is it that you would do? I don't know if you had an opportunity to see the interview between President Trump and Leslie Stahl, the short interview, but after it was over, Kayleigh McEnany came in with a big binder of information claiming this was the Trump healthcare plan. And once they had an opportunity, CBS Evening News staff had a chance to look through it, and Leslie Stahl had a chance to look through it, there was actually nothing there. With that in mind, that concerns me too here in Florida, the fact that, you know, the rates are rising here with the coronavirus, and we have hospitals that are in having threats of being overrun with sick people, not just from the coronavirus, but also from other illnesses. The flu season is upon us and other issues. So with that in mind, does that too bother you that Republicans can talk quite a bit about repealing Obamacare, but they have no cogent plans to actually replace with anything at all? Does that concern you as well?
there is a lot of talk and no action, and I saw that. I did see the 60 Minutes when the press secretary came in with looked like a huge document, and it was nothing. It was it was just a stunt. It was a reality TV. This is not reality TV. This is people's lives. I mean, you lose one member of your family to coronavirus, and that is for the rest of your life. And in Florida, we've had tens of thousands of loss of life, and it's in our country we've had hundreds of thousands of loss of life. So it's just so lacking in a core empathy and caring for people. And what Trump has been saying since he ran for president is that he had this beautiful plan, that it was going to be better than the Affordable Care Act. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. If he did, we would know what it was. He doesn't. And yet people, I understand there are, I disagree with demonizing Trump supporters, because there are, I can understand how some people would, I can understand, even though I don't agree. I guess that's a better way, but I'm not going to put myself in their shoes. But why don't they hold him accountable? Why do they give him a pass? I don't think you should give any elected leader a pass. You should expect them to be honest. You should expect them to be straightforward. You should expect them to do what they say they're going to do. I mean, honesty and integrity to me is the core of what anyone who runs for office. If you don't have integrity, then how does anyone who hears anything that comes out of your mouth believe you or trust you? And frankly, that's what surprises me about Trump supporters more than anything, is why don't they, I mean, where's the questioning? If you want to support him, what is it that he's saying that's going to make your life better? That's going to protect our environment. In Florida, we care so much about our beautiful environment. And that's a bipartisan commitment. About education, educating our children well, no matter where they go to school. What are the, I cannot, and I pay very close attention, as I'm sure you're well aware, I pay very close attention to the details of what individual people who are running for office say. Sitting here today, I can't tell you, other than the unfortunate divisiveness that I think Trump spreads, I can't tell you what has he put forward that has improved any of our lives. I mean, I mean, what has he done? The economy, I know he tries to take credit for that, but, frankly, the economy was improving because of President Obama and what President Obama did. Trump just happened to come in at a time when the economy was getting better, and then the economy crashed because of the coronavirus, and things are going great on the stock market now. But there's a very, 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 very small percentage of Americans that actually have any stock in the stock market. So what are we doing for the majority of Americans? I mean, what has he done? And so look, again, I'm not going to criticize someone for supporting any individual, but you need to, I mean, in my opinion, why do you support that person? What is it about them that causes them to earn your vote?
I am right there with you. And I have a few family members, and I have some friends who are definitely Republicans or Republican leaning. So I get that. And it makes for some interesting conversations around the Thanksgiving dinner table. But at the end of the day, I have never demonized anybody for their political positions or what it is they think about this or that. But like you, one of the concerns that I continue to have also is the divisiveness and the vitriol that you see via Twitter that is actually spilling over in terms of how people even interact with each other out here in our cities and towns across America. I continue to have some concerns about that. And it's almost as if there has been, I don't know, couth and decorum have exited the building.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I hope that it's that the that the new administration will be able to heal some of these wounds that have been generated in the last 4 years. And I can't think of anyone better to do it than the president-elect, because he's been in government, and he's been a part of working across the aisle and reaching out to people. What I hope is that we don't see, in the parties, let's give them a chance. I mean, I don't want to see the Democratic Party start infighting and prevent what I think is the greater goal, which is to get back to a point where we can get things done for the American people.
I'm right there with you. And it's interesting, thanks to Facebook memory, nowadays they provide you a good running track of what it is that you said last year, 10 years ago, or however long. And I was looking back to 2016 in the days after Donald Trump won. And just like we were talking about in Bush v. Gore in 2000, yes, I was disappointed that Hillary Clinton lost in 2016, but there was never a time where in the days and weeks after that I was running around saying this was rigged, the election was stolen, or anything like that. In fact, I had a post where I had predicted, and I guess I am not really Hobbstradamus with an homage to Nostradamus, I had predicted that Donald Trump would actually administer somewhat right, center right, as opposed to being hardcore right. I was actually advocating in one post that we give him a chance, and I just don't see a lot of his supporters being willing to extend the same grace. With that in mind, I know that you've been a huge supporter and friend to the Biden family for a number of years, and you're a supporter of his candidacy. Is there any chance that you might join the Biden-Harris administration, being that you have been such a strong supporter of Joe Biden and Jill, as well as Kamala Harris through the years? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have said to the transition team that if there is a role that I can play that would help further the goals of the Biden-Harris administration, that I would be honored to be considered. I don't know if that's going to be a possibility or not, but certainly there are areas that I have a passion for, that if I can serve my country and help get us back on the right path after 4 years of Donald Trump, I would be honored.
Very good. And with that, you answered that question well, but I have one more for you. I've enjoyed this segment so much, but I have to ask, as a Florida native, just as you are, is there any possibility that you might run again for governor in 2022? It'll be 2022 before we can say 2022. Can we look forward to you running for the Democratic nomination again and trying to defeat Ron Desantis?
I've been asked this question a lot, and I'm not trying to be coy. It is a major undertaking to run a statewide race. A lot of it involves raising a lot of money. I wish that wasn't the case, but I raised, by the time the primary was over, I had raised $19 million, something like that. You have to be at the point where you're ready to do that again. And I don't feel that right now. But on the other hand, I love the state of Florida. I love this state so much. And I'm so concerned that our future is not being well protected by the leadership we've had in the last 20 years. And the areas that I'm passionate about, education, public education being number one, our environment, healthcare. We're going to have a lot of issues with our healthcare system in Florida, as we have so many people who have pre-existing conditions because of the coronavirus. And just, I think, also having leadership again that's focused on the work that needs to be done instead of the celebrity nature of being in an elected office. So I guess that's a roundabout way of saying I don't know. I really don't know, because I want to continue to be an advocate for what I know is best for Florida, and how I do that, I haven't landed on that yet.
That's totally fair. And I appreciate you so much for being the inaugural guest on Front and Center. And I hope that you and your family continue to enjoy the holidays as we head into 2021. And I look forward to having you back as a guest many times in the weeks ahead as we continue to analyze the pertinent social and political and legal issues of our day. Thank you so much, Representative Graham.
Thank you, Chuck. I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to coming back.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon on Front and Center. We look forward to speaking to you again the next time. Take care.